Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode. Today, we're taking a look at Undercover Cops, brought to us by Very and published by Irem back in 1995 for the Super Famicom. Undercover Cops is a side-scrolling beat-em-up that was unfortunately never brought to us here in the US, even though it was planned and later canceled before its release. As a matter of fact, the US version was even reviewed by Nintendo Power before its cancellation.
And it's really a shame, too, because it's a great game that I feel like more people should have had the ability to play back when it was initially released. So, without further ado, let's get into it a little bit, and we'll talk about why Undercover Cops is definitely worth tracking down.
You take on the role of one of three city sweepers whose job it is to clean up a future New York City from thugs and the like. There's Zan, who's pretty well-rounded and a good choice for first-time players. His backstory involves him killing someone out of self-defense in a martial arts tournament, which has prevented him from competing since. There's also Matt, the typical big, strong guy. He's an ex-football player that was wrongfully accused of murder. He may be slow, but he does pack a punch. Finally, there's Rosa, a British crime fighter who's out for revenge after her lover was killed. She's really quick, and along with Zan, is also a great choice for folks that are new to the game. There are a grand total of 5 stages in Undercover Cops, and they're pretty long for the most part. Each one ends with a boss battle, and the bosses in this game are unique for sure. I always really enjoyed the first boss, a cyborg that, if you time it just right, you can throw or kick into a trap and watch him get smashed instantly for the win. This is the kind of thing that I personally love in beat-em-ups, just having that extra option. Kinda like how in Double Dragon 1 on the NES, when you could use the conveyor belt at the end of Stage 1 to send a Bobo straight down to his demise. Another thing that I've always liked about Undercover Cops is the slot machine style assessment that you'll get after each level. It'll tell you how many of each enemy you've taken out and hand out points accordingly, which will end up refilling your health bar and can even net you an extra life every now and then, and trust me, you'll need them. This game can be tough. It's a cool little touch, and it gives you something to look forward to while you take a breather between levels. So, being that this game is indeed an arcade port, there are obviously going to have to be some concessions made for the Super Nintendo. The biggest and most noticeable is the lack of a 2-player option. In the arcade, Undercover Cops was a co-op game. On the Super Nintendo, not so much. It is single-player only now.
And it's a big loss, for sure. But luckily the game is fun enough on its own to still be a blast to play even in single player. But man, if this game had a 2-player option, it could easily be the best beat 'em up on the Super Nintendo.
On your way through the 5 tough stages of Undercover Cops, you'll find lots of weapons and items to pick up and use to your advantage. The staple item here is the giant concrete slab that you'll pull out of the ground and swing with reckless abandon. This thing will wipe out enemies left and right, but beware, as you use it, it does fall apart until there's eventually nothing left of it. In addition, you can hurl torches and burn enemies, whip steel girders at them, and even use a fish as a weapon to dole out some street justice. Nice. Good. And now on to the graphics and sound. The backgrounds and characters in Undercover Cops look phenomenal with tons of detail and great animations. There is a bit of slowdown when things get really hectic, but it doesn't detract from the experience at all. If the graphic style of the game looks familiar to you, it's because the team that worked on Undercover Cops later went on to create the Metal Slug series, and also another favorite game of mine, In the Hunt. The sound is also great. All of the voice samples sound pretty clear by Super Nintendo standards, and the soundtrack is full of awesome tunes. The good news here is that there's also a sound test mode in the options menu, which, in my opinion, all games should have. So there you have it, guys, Undercover Cops on the Super NES. It's such a fun beat-em-up even when playing alone, and it's a tragedy that it never got to see the light of day on our side of the world. Tracking down a Japanese copy can be really expensive these days too, usually costing upwards of hundreds of dollars just for the cart by itself. You can buy a reproduction cartridge of the game for around $40 to $50 on average, and that's what I would recommend for most people who just want to add the game to their collection. The copy that I'm using for this review is a reproduction from Retro Depot, and I couldn't be happier with it. It also comes in a US style cart, so you don't have to worry about modding your system in any way to play it, and that's always nice.
As always, guys, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for watching, subscribing, and of course commenting. I'm going to go ahead and leave a link below to Retro Depot in case you're interested in picking up any one of their awesome Super Nintendo reproductions. And you'll also notice a link below to our Patreon page in case you feel like showing some support to the channel, which is always appreciated. And until next time, guys, stay classic.